Let me start with something that, well, most history books never talk about. In the final years of World War II, American agricultural scientists were sent into Japan to study how a starving, bombed-out nation was still producing food on exhausted land. Cities were in ruins. Fertilizer factories were destroyed. Fuel was scarce. Yet rice fields, vegetable plots and small farms were still producing enough to keep millions alive. What those researchers found shocked them. They discovered that Japanese farmers were using a simple living plant system that naturally rebuilt soil, trapped nitrogen, protected moisture, and honestly, dramatically boosted yields without chemicals. Field reports from the late 1940s show yield increases of 2 to 3 times in some regions where this plant was used correctly. For a brief moment, the United States studied it seriously. Then, almost overnight, the research vanished. Chemical fertilizer took over. Seed companies moved in. And this living system was quietly shelved. Today, almost nobody remembers it, and that is exactly why this story matters. The plant at the center of this story is not exotic or rare. It is a fast-growing legume known as Japanese clover, also called lespedeza, along with related nitrogen-fixing cover crops that were widely used in wartime Japan. These plants were sown directly into fields alongside food crops or between growing seasons. Their roots hosted beneficial bacteria that pulled nitrogen directly from the air and stored it in the soil. At the same time, their dense leaf cover shaded the ground, reduced evaporation, and stopped weeds from taking over. When the plants were cut down or tilled in, they became green manure, feeding the next crop. Japanese farmers used this system on rice paddies, vegetable plots, and orchard land. Instead of stripping nutrients year after year, the soil became richer with every season. Wartime records show that fields managed this way required little outside input and remained productive even under extreme shortages. After Japan's surrender, U.S. occupation authorities sent agronomists to study food production methods. They were desperate to prevent famine. In multiple reports from 1946 to 1949, researchers noted the effectiveness of Japanese legume rotations and green manure systems. Some American universities even ran test plots using these plants. Early trials showed reduced fertilizer needs, improved soil structure, better water retention, and higher yields. For small farmers, this system could have been, absolutely revolutionary. By the early 1950s, the United States had massive chemical production capacity left over from wartime explosives manufacturing. Nitrogen plants were converted into fertilizer factories. Companies needed markets. Farmers were encouraged to buy instead of grow fertility. Chemical fertilizer offered instant results. It was fast, it was measurable. It fit neatly into industrial agriculture. Green manure systems took time, patience, and knowledge. They could not be packaged in bags and sold every season. Seed companies also favoured uniform, high-input crops that perform best with heavy fertilizer use. Cover crop systems interfered with that model. Over time, agricultural education stopped teaching these methods. Extension services shifted focus. Research funding dried up. The Japanese plant system was not banned. It was simply ignored into extinction. When used properly, these nitrogen-fixing plants work on 3 levels at once. First, they increase nitrogen naturally. A healthy legume stand can add over 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year. Second, they rebuild soil structure. Their roots create channels that improve drainage and airflow. This allows crop roots to grow deeper and stronger. Third, they protect moisture and biology. Covered soil stays cooler in summer, warmer in winter, and alive with microbes. Healthy soil biology increases nutrient availability far beyond what fertilizer alone can do. When all 3 effects combine, crops grow faster, resist disease better, and produce more food per square foot. That is where the triple harvest effect comes from. You do not need a farm to use this method. It works in backyards, raised beds, and small homesteads. Start by choosing a nitrogen-fixing cover crop suited to your climate. Japanese clover, crimson clover, hairy vetch, and field peas all work on similar principles. In early spring or late summer, scatter seeds directly over bare soil or between existing plants. Lightly rake them in and water well. Allow them to grow until they are knee-high or beginning to flower. For orchards or perennial beds, it's best to let the cover crop grow continuously and just mow it periodically. Over time, you'll notice the soil will darken, loosen, and, it will hold moisture better. As fertilizer prices rise and supply chains become a bit more unstable, more independent growers are turning back to biological systems. This World War II era method really fits perfectly with preparedness thinking. It requires no factory, no trucks, no annual purchases. Once established, the system, it feeds itself. It also builds long-term resilience, In drought, covered soil survives longer. In floods, structured soil drains better. And in shortages, the garden just keeps producing. That is why this so-called forgotten Japanese system is, quietly, returning in serious homesteading circles. World War II forced people to innovate under pressure. Many of those solutions, honestly, were better than what replaced them. But over time, convenience and profit reshaped agriculture. So, this Japanese plant system, it really proves that high yields don't actually require dependence. What they truly require is, understanding living soil. When knowledge is forgotten, people become customers instead of producers. When it is recovered, independence returns. We are living in an age of fragile systems. Food, fertilizer, fuel, and transportation are tightly linked. One disruption affects everything. Wartime farmers understood this. They built systems that worked even when nothing else did. Learning from them is not nostalgia. It is preparation. If this story opened your eyes to how much practical knowledge has been buried, you are exactly the kind of person this channel is for. These forgotten systems still work. They still matter, and they can still feed families for generations. If you value history, self-reliance and real-world skills, make sure you subscribe. Share this video with someone who still believes in growing food the right way. And, well, stay with us, because there is much more forgotten knowledge waiting to be uncovered.